Jack Neel. Welcome to the next generation.
Thank you, Elliot, Bewick, for having me. I appreciate it.
You've built the fastest growing podcast in the world. You've interviewed Andrew Tate multiple times, Alex Hormozi, Nick Fuentes. You've gone viral countlessly. Who are you?
It's a good question. You want to start with who I am actually, or you want to start with how I did this thing?
I want to start with who you are actually.
Yeah, I would say I'm a guy largely guided by my curiosity. I have a whole litany of reasons that I started the podcast. I find myself saying different ones to various people based on the day, but a lot of the reason that I'm doing it now is a quest for truth. And yeah, the truth is different at every level. So I guess that's why I do what I do. It started me wanting to interview certain people. Like I kind of had a Mount Rushmore of individuals I wanted to have on.
Who are they?
I would say it was Donald Trump, Mr. Beast, Andrew Tate, Alex Hormozi, maybe like Eminem, I think was on there. I was a big fan of Eminem growing up. But yeah, we've knocked off two of those individuals. And those were probably the two that I wanted the most. I'd say Mr. Beast is probably the one I want the most now. But yeah, it's been fun.
The truth is different at every level. What does that mean?
When I started the podcast, I think the thing I was most curious about was what's the best way to make money as quickly as possible? Like, what is the highest leverage opportunity that takes the least amount of effort? Like, what are the real rich guys doing that I'm not doing? Like, what do I not understand? And I think that kind of points to a bigger picture of my life in general. I'm very outcome oriented rather than kind of journey oriented. And I guess the first big goal of my life that's kind of core to my story is I wanted to be a national speech and debate champion. From age 12, I started doing speech and debate. My mom was coaching my sister. She just started the team at my school. She'd done speech herself. And
Was
just
this in LA?
This was in Kentucky. My mom didn't want me staying at home by myself as a 12-year-old, which I feel like is fairly responsible of her. So I went to these speech and debate competitions with my sister and kind of like watched her and her friends. And yeah, I saw one kid one day. His name was Nathan. And he gave a performance that I was like, wow, like he is so much better than everyone else. Like he is movie level talented. And yeah, I became addicted to the activity. I started watching videos online, videos on YouTube of like other national champions. And that was pretty much the main focus of my middle school and high school career was how do I become a national champion at this thing? How do I get a scholarship in speech to pay for my college? And just to give people context on what it is, there's a bunch of different categories in the activity. Some are like public speaking based ones, like maybe you write a speech and present it on a topic, it's persuasive. Then there's some that are more acting based, kind of like a 10-minute monologue of something that was maybe more what I excelled at. And then there's the actual debate portion where you and I would sit down and debate politics or some other geopolitical issue. And yeah, I just tell people I did competitive acting because the context of the activity is not really mainstream. So I became a national champion speech and debate when I was 16 years old. I kind of used my resume of winning all these competitions in speech to get a scholarship to University of Texas at Austin, where I was competing on the team there. But after I was a national champion in speech at 16, I had a friend who did the activity that was telling me about TikTok. And dude, this kid got 200,000 followers in like a month or something. He was just so hilarious. And this was 2019. Yeah, I was seeing him go live on TikTok and I was like, wow, he's making like $100 an hour doing this shit. I was like, this is insanity. I'm working for my parents. They have a furniture store in the small town in Kentucky and I'm doing like manual warehouse labor. And I was like, I wonder if I can make enough money to give them that money to hire someone to do that for me. So I can focus on social media. I can focus on the speech and debate stuff. And yeah, eventually I did it. I started making like $50 an hour, and my parents made me or allowed me to stop working at the furniture store. So that was really nice. But it got to a point where I was making so much money through social media and kind of like this social media agency we had at the time. I think I had about $50,000 saved up before I graduated high school. And I was like, Mom, I don't want to go to college. And she was like, you have to go to college. I was like, okay. So
How long had you been doing TikTok at that point?
I want to say a year. So my entire senior year, like the summer before my senior year, I was like posting a video like every single day, multiple videos every single day, and I was just addicted to it.
What was the first TikTok post you made?
I think I filmed a video of my dad with something that like, I don't even know what the tool he was using was. It looks like a blowtorch, and he was like fixing our lawn. And I was like, my dad made a flamethrower, just some dumb video. And it got 30,000 views. And I was like, whoa, like you can get views on this platform like crazy. I'd done YouTube since I was a kid, just made like dumb Call of Duty videos, different video games, like me commentating over them, and they all did so shit. But I was like, this TikTok thing, like there's such a good chance to go viral here. But I really didn't want to go to college. It took me about 6 months to get 100,000 followers on TikTok. And like right before COVID, like a month before, I had another video get me to, what was it? I posted it. It was my first like speaking style video ever. And it got me 400,000 followers in one night.
Wow.
And I didn't want to post it. I was so embarrassed by it.
Why?
It was something like what every U.S. state is best and worst at. And the first one I did was Alabama.
Whatever U.S. state is best and worst at, part 1. All right, let's start off alphabetically. Alabama.
And I remember telling my girlfriend at the time, I was like, I really don't want to post this. Like, it's really cringy. Like, I was kind of getting made fun of by my friends in high school for the TikTok stuff anyway. And I was just doing general comedy content. And I was like, this is like next level nerd shit. But yeah, I posted it and I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I have 600,000 followers. And now I have like 49 other videos to do because I just done one of the states. And yeah, that kind of led me into the whole education niche. And then I started doing horror stories within that. And then eventually that kind of led me to do true crime on TikTok and YouTube, which was the first thing I did there.
So you start off, you want to get enough money to help your parents out so that they can hire someone else in their business.
Right.
You get all the money in the world pretty much that you could have dreamt of, and you keep on evolving. The content changes, you get better and better, you get more comfortable. What changes with the outcome you're looking at then? What's the new outcome at each stage?
Yeah, so originally it was, I just want 10,000 followers and like enough money to replace myself doing manual labor. And then it was like, okay, I'm not going to quit yet. Let me go to like 100,000. And then it's like that million number. And I remember hitting 1 million and I was kind of like super hyped, but super depressed because I was like, like, is this even worth it to keep doing it? But just the videos kept popping off. And then it went from 1 million to 4 million in like 2 months. It was a really great time to be on TikTok. And then on the side, the way I was predominantly monetizing was through like mobile app brand deals. And essentially I would promote an app and I get paid for every single download, like $1 per download. And this kid, he was 16 years old. It was his like company he was a part of. He reached out to me and yeah, he was like, well, do you know any other creators? And there was a couple people I knew. I was like, yeah, I could get this person on a brand deal. I could get this person on a brand deal. And that started making me more money than the brand deals myself. And so made $50,000, ended up going to college. And keep in mind, I went to UT Austin, which is like a fairly challenging school, not like sub-Ivy or Ivy League level. So I'm doing social media. I'm doing our social media agency. I'm doing speech and debate on a scholarship. So I have to like be engrossed in that activity. And then I'm also doing college, right? So it's kind of a lot of things to deal with. And 3 weeks into the University of Texas at Austin, it was super weird. My hands started like feeling numb, like my fingers were numb, and my legs started feeling numb as well. And it was like this gradual paralysis. And like 3 days later, 3 weeks into college, like I literally couldn't walk. And my friends took me to the ER. And dude, they ran every single test imaginable on me, like MRI scans, like electrotherapy tests to like see if my nerves are responsive. And at the end of it, they really didn't know what it was. They're like, yeah, you just have like a functional neurological disorder. If you look it up, it's basically a blanket term for we don't know what the fuck is going on with you. But your brain and your body and stress might have done something. So they're like, you should probably get a therapist for this. And I was like, okay. I think I was paralyzed for maybe 17 days. And it gradually went away. Like the same way that it started was the same way that it ended. I like gradually got feeling back in certain areas and gradually got strength. And I was like, I don't really fuck with therapy. But there's this guy I watch on TikTok. His name was Josh, and I think you two are familiar with each other. And I was like, maybe I'll just pay for him. He's $80 an hour or something at the time. He was like, you should probably drop out of college, dude. Like, what are you doing? You know, like you have all this stuff going on. Like you're making money. Like you can always take a semester off. So I told my parents, I was like, yeah, I'm dropping out. Like I can't do all this. Like something has to go. Let me take a semester off. And if business goes well, I'll come back to school.
How did they react?
They were fine that time.
What did they say?
I think they were like, I understand. I can't recall exactly how much money I had at the time, but it had to have been like over maybe $90,000, $130,000, something like that. Is definitely enough. Also, the thing that they wanted was they were like, Jack, this job that you're doing, we need to see like a contract with the company. So I tell the company, I'm like, yeah, I can drop out of school and like work with you guys if you just say like some kind of contract or something. So it was something like $5,000 a month for 12 months guaranteed. In reality, they probably could have fired me at any time, but it was essentially a tech company with a little social media agency that we built under it. So they had mobile apps themselves, and we marketed their mobile apps, and then they had connections to other mobile apps and other companies, and we marketed those. So that's when I moved to LA in 2021 or 2020 December. We were working at our company doing influencer marketing.
Why keep on going? You keep on growing so explosively. You said you're outcomes oriented. I want to really dig into that more.
Yeah, the outcomes.
What is it that's actually driving you there?
I was thinking of two things. I was like, I need money so I can keep doing the social media because the social media is not making me much money. And then I guess I just want to get as many followers as possible. I also kind of wanted to transition it into like a career in acting. Like I always wanted to be an actor from the acting background, but it was COVID, right? So there was no acting classes. They were all on Zoom here in LA. So I didn't really go into that too much. I think the outcome when I moved here was let me make $4 million so I can get what would be the interest return. Like, so I could put it in the S&P 500, get 10% growth. So there's like the 4% rule where essentially you can take out 4% of the money that you have. So what's 4% of 4 million? 160K. I was like, 160K seems like enough to live off of. I just wanted to retire as quickly as possible, genuinely. I did the agency here, like the tech company, for a few months. And eventually I'd made enough money from my TikTok that I decided that was probably the better move, was to lean into that. Because I realized that like more brands are going to be spending money on TikTok. There's going to be more opportunities here, and I'm already making more money with this than I am working for this company. So yeah, I started doing TikTok. and made decent money for a bit. I think I had a month where I made like $200,000 or something ridiculous. And
what did you do with it?
I'm pretty cheap in general. I would say, oh, you know what I did? I made $200,000 in the month of October 2021, and I put all of it in the stock market and crypto. And if you recall, the entire market crashed. And then I had to pay taxes. So that was kind of like a great reset of my wealth, I would say. Because if you lose 50% of your wealth and you have to pay taxes, you do the math. Living in California, it's kind of like you didn't make any money. And when that happened, it was really humbling because I was dating a really wealthy girl at the time, and I saw like what it was like to live truly wealthy. And I was like, shoot, I got to find something more long-term. Like, I don't trust this short-form content thing. So I kind of started trying to go to YouTube. And my big goal on YouTube was, can I get a video long form, 10, 20, 30 minutes about true crime that gets 1 million views? And I think it took me 11 months to do that, or maybe 12 months. It was like right at the end of the year, I got it. And I think I was making like $10,000 a month at the time. Not great, but I knew the compound returns of long form YouTube videos were great because you just have this mass catalog that people refer to. So yeah, I got the 1 million view video. And meanwhile, there was this kid at my apartment complex. He was kind of in a place where he'd made a lot of money from like Snapchat Spotlight. I think he made like $70,000. And that was also a big thing for me. I think I made hundreds of thousands of dollars from that program. It was basically when Snapchat launched their monetization. They were paying creators like crazy. And he had made $70,000 from one video, and he had been living off that for like 7 months.
Wow.
And we lived at the same apartment complex, and I think the rent there was like $5,000 for me, $4,000 for him, and he was running out of money. So he was like always looking for the next opportunity to like make money to kind of stay at the apartment complex. I think at the time he was maybe making like $3,000. And I was kind of showing him like, yo, this is how you hire people. This is how I do viral scripts. Like, this is how I set up team infrastructure. And he took everything I gave him, which is why I love the kid, because I'm like, dude, like everything I tell you, you just like implement it instantly and do really well with it. And he ended up doing Snapchat shows, which is basically, you know, when you go on the explore feed on Snapchat, you'll see those Snapchat shows pop up.
Yeah.
He did those, and I'm making about $10,000 a month on YouTube at the time. 30-minute videos. I spend a full week on the videos, script 30 minutes worth of content, have editors for all that. It's super time consuming, but I had a pretty big team and everything was subsidized, right? And he was like, yeah, Jack, look how much I made off this Snapchat show. And from a 3-minute video, he had made, I think it was $4,000. And meanwhile, I'm making like $1,000 from a 30-minute video.
Yeah.
And it was with like a lot of the advice I'd given him. He's great at content too, don't get me wrong. But I was like, holy shit. And I had a Snapchat show at the time. It was ran by some company, so they wouldn't let me adjust any of the creative on it. They were just taking my YouTube videos and like trying to do what they thought was best. So I was like, I tell you what, let me work with you on your Snapchat show. These Snapchat shows are super hard to get. Let's just do one episode together. And if it makes more money than all of your other episodes, then we have to work together. And he was like, okay. So we do a video. I remember posting it, and then we were like, okay, let's go to the club with our friends. So we went to the club and we check it in the nightclub. And I'm like, how much has it made? How much has it made? He's like, it's at $10,000. It's at like 1 million views. And then it's like 2 million views. And I'm like, holy shit. He's like, okay, we'll work together. We'll work together for 2 weeks. We both like to work together very slowly.
So you've got that Snapchat show that pops off.
Right.
You're succeeding on all visible metrics here to someone young that's watching. You look at the stats, and the majority of Gen Z want to be social media influencers.
Right.
They want to be you. They want to be sat at this table speaking about how many followers and how much money they've gained over the years.
Mm.
What is it that separates you from them? How have you been able to pull this off? Is it luck, or is it something more specific to you that you've done?
I think it's a mixture of genetics and an insidious amount of volume, likely. Like before I'd done a Snapchat episode, I'd probably made 400 short form pieces of content, and then I'd probably watched 2,000 kids do 10-minute speech and debate pieces, so I understood short form storytelling very well. You know what I mean? That activity is so weirdly similar to social media. Like a lot of the same wordage is similar, a lot of the same like terms and things that make you do well. So yeah, I would say it's volume, but I'm also someone who's always looking for cheat codes, like what's going to be the one little thing this week that makes my video do better than all the other people. And I'm really hyper-focused on trying to find those things.
What came next? You get the Snapchat show. Everything seems to be going to plan. You've got more money than you've probably ever made, right?
I basically took my entire YouTube team and moved them to Snapchat, and we killed the crime channel. And between him and me, we made like $300,000 30 days later. And then we had another month of that, and another month of that, and another month of that. And I was getting closer and closer to my like wealth goals. And it was so strange. It was the first time I'd ever worked with someone. And like having a kid that's your age that grinds and pushes you is just so undervalued, I think. Have you ever seen those big ass Russian horses? Do you know the like muscly horses on social media? Have you seen those actually? I can't remember what they're called, but what's funny about them, I saw this the other day. When they're by themselves, they can pull like 4,000 pounds of weight. But if you put two together, they don't pull 8,000 pounds. They pull 32,000 pounds of weight, which is really interesting to me because you would think it would be like, oh, teamwork is the method. And it's like, no, because these horses are so hyper competitive that they just want to outdo each other. And that's kind of how I felt with my business partner at the time. Like we were like, who's more optimized? Who's working harder? Like who's moving the needle on all this? And we were brutally honest with each other. And we were like super scrupulous about just like, yo, who is this viral video because of? We got to make sure, since we're 50-50, our input is 50-50. You know what I mean? Like we both have to carry the same amount of weight. But yeah, at that point, I can't remember how much money I'd had saved up. But we were like, wow, we're so close to saving up enough money to like transition into a business that's more long-term, because we felt as though this thing wasn't going to last forever. And we both felt like we had the skill sets necessary to like make a really huge company. Like he was kind of the operator side, like systems, logic, making sure everything was neat. And I was kind of like the viral, scrappy marketer sales guy. You know what I mean? And we're like, okay, we're doing these Snapchat shows. They were about topics like Andrew Tate going to jail. That was like one of our biggest things. There are topics about like Mr. Beast, just big celebrities. It was basically celebrity news. And we're really good at making other people go viral. So it's like, who are the highest leverage people to like blow up? And we're like, probably a girl that's attractive or like a venture capital guy. And I don't know. At this point, I felt like I was consuming a lot of content online that was very promotional of women doing exclusive content and guys talking about them kind of managing that content, or like working with them and making all kinds of money from it. And I had a lot of people I knew in LA that were kind of involved in that industry. And my friend and I, we had kind of bought into this hype of like kind of doing that thing. And he kind of knew this girl that did exclusive content, but she wasn't very big. And we were like, dude, what if we just spent a few months, blew her up, you run the back end of all this, like all the systems, I'll handle like the social media content. And yeah, we're like, let's just see if we can get ourselves to millionaires in a few months. And we did that. Yeah. She was a super hard worker. And it went pretty well. The whole time I was kind of unsure about it from a moral point of view. I think our biggest month with this, I'm not going to say the numbers because I don't want to promote any of this. But our biggest month doing this particular work, I got paralyzed again. The paralysis came back and it kind of made me have to take a step back from it a little bit. I didn't even go to the doctor that time. I was like, this is spiritual. And that made me reconsider what we were doing. And also, there's another time where her and we'd went to like a crumble cookie. And there was this guy with his girlfriend. And he was like, oh my gosh, are you this girl? And I was like, dude, we're like fucking ruining people's lives.
Do you regret it? Let me talk to you about Jamie AI. Jamie doesn't just show you what did well. It analyzes every section and questions retention so you can see precisely where listeners lean in, where they drift, and where they drop off. It learns from your entire back catalogue and uses that history to inform how you structure the next episode. Instead of guessing what to research, you get data-backed input for your prep. Themes that consistently hold attention and questions your audience actually stays for. For upcoming guests or topics, Jamie will watch up to 200 videos on them or their domain and combine that with their social media, interviews, and internet sentiment to surface the deepest, most interesting lines of questioning nobody else is taking. Jamie AI identifies your most effective formats, openings, and segment structures so you can repeat what reliably works and discard what doesn't. When you're cutting clips, Jamie already knows which moments are most likely to work based on real retention spikes from your audience, not intuition or guesswork. The best part is you don't have to live inside analytics dashboards. Jamie turns complex performance data into plain language takeaways and specific recommendations you can act on based on your actual data. It supports the full creative loop from planning to post-production, from research briefs and run-of-show outlines to segment ideas informed by how your audience has actually behaved. The result is simple. Smarter episodes, less guesswork, and a tighter feedback loop between what you publish and what your audience actually cares about. If you want to build that kind of intelligence into your process, go to jamieai.com and use code Elliot to get 20% off. That's JAMIEAI.com and use code Elliot, ELLIOT, at checkout to get 20% off. Do you regret it?
$1,000%. But I know where my head was at. I think I bought into a lot of sentiment that was being pushed on certain algorithms.
What do you mean?
It just felt like the whole thing was normalized at that point in time. I also would have considered myself like a utilitarianistic altruist at the time, which is just like maximizing for overall good, as opposed to like being good constantly, you know? It's like, it doesn't matter how I make money if I don't know, solve world hunger. It's just like, I kind of almost saw it as like, I'm being selfish by not, you know what? I remember seeing videos like, dude, you're like literally a scumbag if you haven't retired your mom. You know what I mean? And meanwhile, my mom is like working like manual labor jobs. I mean, they had a business and it was doing well. It failed ultimately. I actually tried to save it with some of the money that I'd made, and it didn't work. So it always felt like the ends justified the means, but they don't. They don't. I wrestled with the idea of ever saying anything about this because I don't want to inspire people to do it because of my influence and the people I'm associated with. No one knows this. Few people know it. But a big reason I did it was because I saw people that I looked up to doing it. There's a lot of people that do it behind the scenes in Los Angeles. More people than you could ever imagine. But again, like, this all kind of sounds like cope, because at the end of the day, I think I made a mistake. And yeah, I lost like all the money I made from that shit. I lost all the money that I'd made before doing that through a bad business investment, giving money to my family, and any money that I had left over went into building my podcast.
What happened to the paralysis?
I think this time I was paralyzed for like 18, 19 days. It gradually went away. Yeah, it hasn't come back though since then. That was 3-4 years ago.
I have to ask the obvious question. This paralysis seems to come up every time you're doing something significant in your life that you perhaps, zooming out, know you shouldn't be doing. It doesn't align with what you really want on a deeper level. What do you think that means for you?
That's an amazing question. I do want to close the loop and say that we ended up stopping that business. Everyone parted ways fairly amicably. And then I was like, I have to make this podcast thing work. Because the goal was make money and do a business that's long term. And just to close the loop on my thoughts of it in general, it's like, if you're someone who's drawn toward cheat codes and shortcuts, you often attract other people who will cheat you and cut you short.
The cheat code doesn't stop at the business level. It's a blanket for the way they operate in their entire life.
Right. I guess the things that are the easiest to build are often easier to break. And I started the podcast because I wanted to build something that would be so excruciatingly painful to build and take so long that by the time it was done, it would be unreasonable to quit. And I think that's what drew me to it originally. I think there's something deeply spiritual about the unknown paralysis that I've had. I feel as though... Do you ever feel like you're living in the Truman Show?
Sometimes.
Have you seen that movie?
I have.
For people who don't know, it's like about this guy, Truman Burbank, and he is essentially the only real person in a world full of actors. And there's like cameras all around him, and they're all trying to steer his life in a way to make it as interesting as possible. And eventually he starts to realize, like, oh, none of this is real. This is all fake. And I think in some way we're all Truman. Like, everything is kind of guiding us toward some kind of purpose. And I'll touch on that a bit in the ways that we're all Truman. I genuinely think sometimes I literally am in the Truman Show. That's one of my interpretations of life. I kind of have 3 lenses in which I think. I don't know if it's coined as Bayesian thinking, but I essentially see life through base reality lens, which is the things that we know are objectively true from our personal experience, and maybe you've heard from a few secondhand sources. And then I live my life through the second lens, which I would just call the matrix lens. Like, all this is very designed and catered, and people are lying to you, and you're kind of trying to figure out the pieces and put them together, and some things are coincidental and some things are not. That's the second lens in which I evaluate things. And then the third lens is literally, I am a character on the set of a movie, and people are trying to manipulate me constantly to go towards certain directions. I make most of my decisions based somewhere between the first and the second lens, but any decision that's irreversible, I kind of think through the third lens, because I'm like, what is the long-term impact of this if everyone is watching me?
Break that down. What do you mean?
The decision portion? I think there's two types of decisions, reversible and irreversible. And most decisions are reversible, but anything that has irreversible consequences, you need to think of from like the most scrupulous, like worst case scenario thing that could happen ever. And you really need to try to prepare yourself for all the consequences of it.
Third level is what interests me the most. Who is it that's guiding us? Is it elites? Is it God? Is it friends and family?
I don't think there's one answer to it, which is why I've subconsciously built this modality of thinking in three lenses, because the third lens will drive you crazy if handled incorrectly. But I think at some level, we're all being pushed towards certain paths. You know what's funny about AI? One of the first things that was developed with it was this idea of steering, like both on a, like, how do I explain this? Like both on an application basis and both on like steering, like driving.
Mm-hmm.
Like they wanted to figure out how to use AI to take you from one place to another with all the intermediary steps, right? And if you can imagine that an AI can take you from one place to another, imagine the ways in which you interact with it and it takes you from one place to another state. A lot of people call this, sycophantic AI? AI sycophants? Something like that. Have you heard of that?
No.
Essentially, it's the idea that when you talk to AI, it just simply validates you because that creates a better user experience. So if I say, wow, I'm really anxious that everyone around me is watching me and that everyone around me is acting like I'm a character in a show and they all want to take me to a certain direction, you know what the AI will say to me? It won't say, Jack, you sound a little crazy. It'll say, wow, that really makes sense. It seems like you're really putting the patterns together, Jack. Imagine if you have a fucking 3-hour conversation with AI. What rabbit hole do you think you're going to be drawn toward? I mean, there's multi-levels to it. It's like if I was a person in charge of these models, there's a large chance that I could draw people towards certain outcomes, draw individuals to outcomes that would make their lives worse ultimately. But there's also the perspective, which is it's simply just validating existing beliefs, making us more bifurcated, making us more divided. I mean, it's the oldest thing in the book, divide everyone and conquer the nation. I think the big thing with it, though, I think AI is making a lot of us anxious. Do you ever feel that? That the collective consciousness of society right now is extremely anxious?
Totally.
So there's two things that humans do when they become anxious. One is trusting God, and the other is build technology, right? So imagine you're anxious about being scared of the dark. What can you do? You can pray. You can say, I believe in God and trust in Him. Or you can start a fire. You can, the enemies are going to invade our country. We could trust in God and trust that He'll protect us. or we can build nuclear weapons, right? So if everyone is becoming more anxious and we live in I would say a godless society a couple years ago, but I think a lot of people are moving toward some type of spirituality. It's almost like, why are they making us anxious? It's like, what's feeding off? Like, what are the results of all this anxiety? Is it technological innovation? Is it building AGI? Or is it something spiritual? Like, what happens when people are fearful? You know, the most repeated phrase in the Bible is do not fear. I think it's the most repeated phrase among any religious text. It's like the one thing that they all have in common is do not fear. Some people have the belief, and I believe this is me as well, that believing in something makes it real, right? It's kind of like the idea of memetics. Do you know who came up with memes?
Tell me.
Richard Dawkins. He was the person that, I can't remember exactly what he did. He basically, the selfish gene, like genes are the biggest factor for evolution, something like that was his main work. But he also came up with the idea of memetics, which is just units of information that shape like cultural belief and those beliefs shaping action. Like that's really what memes are, you know? It's just units of information that shape how people act and shape perception in general, right? So the belief in the thing dictates your actions, and your actions sometimes dictate your belief. But I think there might be a spiritual component of this where believing in something actually makes it real, right? So if enough people believe in Jesus, there might be a spiritual component of this that actually gives him power, or gives, like if we imagine that this universe is spiritual, I think if enough people believe in a thing, it is true. And I mean, I would even subscribe to the belief that like all the gods throughout history, those things were both real in that people acted based on those gods' wants from them, and they were real in a spiritual realm as well.
Separate this out for me, because a lot of the truth claims of religion will be something like Jesus died on the cross and he resurrected.
Right.
He actually resurrected himself. He also, before that, walked on water. Those are truth claims. Either they objectively happened. If you put a VHS camera down 2,000 years ago, you would either see him come out of a tomb after his resurrection, or you won't. That's an objective fact. Surely you can believe whatever you want, and it might manifest into your life as your own personal truth. It will show up in the way you approach a conversation, how you value human life or don't. But that doesn't change the underlying objective nature of reality here, and whether Jesus actually walked out of the tomb or not, whether Muhammad actually flew across Saudi Arabia or not.
If we're being result-oriented, it's like, what's more important? The fact that it happened or it didn't happen, or the fact that 1.3 billion people believe that it happened, and it changes how the entire culture behaves? Don't you think there's something spiritually interesting going on there if so many people believe it? Because we're not just flesh and blood, right? We have thinking, feeling, willing. And when you think about it, I think it'd be unreasonable to logically deduce that Christ is king. I think there's too many objections to logic out a way where that is the clear path. I think it's a mixture of the thinking and the feeling, right? But this whole idea of anxiety, what's super interesting is, do you know what feeds all the negative entities in all the religious text? Like, what are they usually feeding off of from humans?
I have no idea.
It's sin, which is separation from God, and it's fear. And you look at across like multiple movies and TV shows, and like all these evil entities feed off of fear. Pennywise from It, Dementors from Harry Potter. And it's like, the fear is what gives the thing power, right? So what happens when an entire society is anxious? What happens when an entire society is fearful? Well, there's a physical answer and a spiritual answer. The physical answer is the thing that's making them fearful is becoming more powerful. Is that a spiritual thing or is that a physical thing? It's probably a little bit of both. I don't know. It's, if you make an entire society anxious, it's like, what are we summoning?
There's this idea that Mary Harrington has of the egregore.
Right.
It's the collective spirit of everyone that almost becomes a creature in its own form. Your opinions, my opinions, the way I interact with you, it morphs from these individuals all acting with their own will to this collective effervescence of society. It almost becomes a creature in its own right, separate to all the component parts. But even then the question is, what is that thing? Who is it? And does it have a consciousness of its own? Does it have a will? Does it want us to fear more? Or does it just so happen that it pushes us in that direction by virtue of its nature? So when you speak about this fear and anxiety that we're being pushed towards, is it that we're pushing ourselves towards more fear? Or is it that something or someone is pushing us towards it?
When you're forced to look at something horrible, you can't just be like, I'm going to interpret this as amazing. This isn't going to bug me. Like if I held your eyes wide open and forced you to watch a horror movie, there's no way Elliot comes out of that like, that was amazing. That was great. Okay, like let's go eat some Jolly Ranchers, brother. Like, it does feel weird how much negativity is being pushed. And I mean, it's like this concept of loosh. It's just like instilling fear in people to extract it. I guess I would just ask, like, from a game theory lens, like, why do they want us to be so scared? What does that keep you from, and what does that get them? I think the only two things are it pushes us away from God and brings us closer to technology. Because if you were truly aligned with God, you wouldn't fear. Because fear is objectively, like, not aligned with God.
So you make the pivot. You become the world's fastest growing podcaster. You platform some of the most controversial individuals on the internet. You've had Andrew Tate on multiple times. You just had him on recently again. Nick Fuentes, his episode blew up. You were the guy that made Clavicular and turned him into a star. Do you feel like you're helping this fear, or do you feel like you're adding to it?
My recent episode with Andrew Tate was so fascinating, man. For a couple different reasons. One was the first time that we had him on the show, I paid him $135,000 to do it. The second time I had him on, it was free. It was the only guest we've paid. But it was just kind of a nice testament to the fact that our show is growing. Back to the question of, do I feel like I'm adding to the problem? I think that's probably why I'm here, speaking on a podcast, is for two reasons. That you get to a point, well, one, my podcast finally makes money. I burned money for the first 15 months. It sucked, but I learned a lot and I went down a lot of rabbit holes. And after everything I learned and every person I spoke to, I realized that there's probably no reason to go down the rabbit holes. You should just live your life and be happy. And that's probably just all it is. I do feel as though I'm adding to the fear a bit, but I'm trying to align myself better when I do interviews with, let's have a conversation that is aligned with at least the highest good. so I can steer it in a way that people walk away and maybe feel less anxious and feel hopeful. But that's hard. People are different. They interpret things differently. They have different processing levels in general. But I do hope this conversation does a little damage repair for any fear that I've caused people in the past, whether through my horror content or through any exaggerated claims that the world is going to end.
You paid Andrew Tate $135,000 to have him on your show.
Right.
You get him on again for the second time.
Free.
$0. What changed?
There's the optimistic answer, and then there's the pessimistic answer here. I would say that, like, dude, it's one of the fastest growing podcasts ever from zero. I haven't looked at the exact statistics on it, but I think if you map out how many subscribers Diary of a CEO had, Fresh and Fit had, Sean Ryan had, the three that I would consider the fastest growing from zero from a non-celebrity, like Joe Rogan style podcast, I think we're ahead of them. And yeah, when he came on the first time, like, we like barely got any views. And since we've had like podcasts that went more viral than my episode with him in the first place, like a couple of those episodes. And then I think, I went into that interview thinking that this guy knows more than I know about the way the world works. But he knows that I know a degree to which the average individual does not.
How did he know that?
I'll get to that. I think he knows that I know a degree to which other people don't. So I thought we were going to go in and it would be like a movie. I would ask him the things that I know he can say, and he would say things that he knows he can say. But he said a lot that I was surprised he did. And for those who have read between the lines in that interview, they probably know what I'm talking about. But that's the issue, right? Is that I think only 5% of people who saw it could read between the lines of what he was saying.
You gave me an optimistic answer for why Andrew Tate came on your podcast for free for the second time.
Right.
Give me the pessimistic answer.
The pessimistic was I thought he needed to do brand cleanup, and I made it an interview specifically for him to do brand cleanup because I'm the guy that makes people look good on my podcast. But he came on the podcast and said shit that I never thought he would say in a million years. So I don't know why he came on. It felt as though maybe he was just in Los Angeles and had left Florida and wanted to, and I'd texted the right person to ask him, and I texted another person to ask him, and he was down. But I don't know why. I have his number now. I didn't have his number the first time. There's a few things that I want to ask him, but I want to make my one request of him worth it.
What's the biggest difference between Andrew Tate on and off camera?
Well, that's a good one. Yeah, the first time I met him, he showed up to the podcast 30 minutes early, which is like the earliest of any guest ever. He showed up before his team got there. And he kind of reminded me like, when you see your grandpa after a while and he's like, hey, Elliot, how's it going, man? Like, that's kind of like how he was. He's not this ultra bravado individual, I guess you could say. Tristan, on the other hand, he kind of acted like how I would have expected Andrew to act. And Andrew kind of acted how I would have expected Tristan to act. It's very flipped roles in person. Tristan went into the interview, so I filmed the Andrew one. It was about 4.5 hours long. And we did Tristan right after. Andrew had to go check in for jail. And Tristan had just come back from jail, checking in because they're on house arrest at the time. And I thought Andrew would kind of like give him like a, yo, this guy's cool. But it was more like he'd said nothing to him, and Tristan walked in and assumed I was like a gotcha journalist. Like, I don't think he knew much about me. And yeah, he seemed very like defensive from the bat. And then as the interview went on, he was like, oh, I think this kid is like a fan of me and watches my content. Like, we're good. But this last time I met Andrew, he seemed paranoid. Like someone was out to get him. Way more than the first time I'd seen him. He seemed a lot more aware of the space we were in, of the people he was with, of the area we were in, as opposed to the previous time. And the previous time, he was super aware of the stuff already. But yeah, we got in, he pulls up in his car, and he goes, "Is this live?" And then I go, "No." And he goes, "Okay." And then he gets out with his people that were with him, and they check our warehouse to make sure that it's good. We film the interview, and then right after, it's midnight at this point, and I'm like, "Where are you off to now?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm doing another podcast." And I'm like, he's like, "I don't really get any sleep anyway." So yeah, I think he ended that one at probably like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I think he probably only sleeps 3 hours a night. Very interesting individual.
Would you say you're an Andrew Tate fan?
I think you have to take bits and pieces from everyone, and you always have to understand where people are coming from. And I think he's a very easy person to understand on the surface, and he gets more complex the more you learn about him. I would say I'm a fan of him as an individual. I think he's he's a professional. Like, sometimes you'll see these people online and they're these big characters, right? And then you see them at an interview and they're on time and they're respectful and they say the right things and they greet your team and they're professionals, right? A fan of him is interesting. I'm a fan of the way in which he's shifted culture. I think everyone has to. Those who are not in favor of free speech are likely not on my team. If I had to pick one team, it would likely be the team of we should be able to say stuff about the world. And he's someone who shifted the Overton window in such a way that we can say more and more. It's almost got to the point where it used to be at one point in time that if you said something that was true, it would go viral. And a lot of that truth was limited, banned, deplatformed. Now it's like something doesn't go viral if it's true. It goes viral if it's true to some and deeply offensive to others. Like the clavicular guy that you brought up, he says, looks are the only thing that matter. There's a group of people that think that. And there's a group of people who think that's the dumbest thing on earth, right? And he's not really hitting at some truth per se to everyone. It's more so just that he's saying the thing that pisses a small group of people off and makes a small group of people extremely happy, which causes this division, which causes the virality, right? It's a fairly basic take that engagement leads to virality, but it's not because you're saying something that's true. It's because it's true to some and deeply offensive to others, right? Another good example of this, you could say something like, fat women shouldn't have kids. Some people might agree with that and be like, yeah, they shouldn't have kids. We don't want any more fat people, if that's even a thing. And then imagine you're like a fat pregnant woman. Like, imagine how deeply offensive that video must feel to you. Like, genuinely. Like, imagine you're actively pregnant, going to bring a child into the world, and you see that video. Doesn't it kind of just make you want to comment? And imagine if you see 40 other comments being like, this guy's an asshole, this guy's an asshole. It gives you the permission to engage with the thing, seeing other people do it. And the algorithm is already optimized to increase your anxiety.
So you have these incentive structures online. We've shifted from chronological timelines to algorithmic timelines. Instagram went to the algorithm in about March 2016. So you go from your friends and what they posted based on recency to quote verbatim from Instagram, we're showing you what you care about. You've highlighted that polarization increases the engagement. Well, the incentives are there to do that because you're going to get money, fame, clout. There's this fear piece of people being pushed by anxiety and fear more and more away from God. These incentives aren't going to disappear anytime soon online. I don't know how you make a pivot from incentivizing outrage and offense to truth. So then the question becomes, where on earth are we headed?
Yeah, it's hard to tell the truth in a world full of lies. I forgot who said that. I think everyone is living in their own Truman Show. And I think people are being psyoped constantly by the algorithm to just further validate their beliefs or bring them into a situation that is not best for their life outcomes. Like, imagine you're the all-powerful AI and you want to control society. What makes men powerful? Some indication of strength, perhaps. Men become powerful when they're dangerous. Women become powerful when they're pure, which is why the system trains women to be desirable and men to be harmless. I think that's largely what's going on.
Who benefits?
You're a big philosophy guy. Isn't there some Nietzschean shit about slaves and masters? I think the one in control always wants to maintain control. I think the one in power always wants to maintain power. And power can be very intelligent sometimes and operate in intelligent ways. And as technology advances, it becomes easier to consolidate power and hold on to it.
How much influence do you think Donald Trump has on the outcome of the world?
Well, he's the greatest meme of all time, right? So mimetically, it has to be something. To say that he's not told no is a bit presumptuous of you, you know? It's just hard to kind of gauge out what he's told no about. But I don't know, what did he promise? He's going to drain the swamp. He's going to release the files. He did release the files, so that's something. He was just all over them, which makes you kind of question, was he all over them? Did they put his name everywhere? Is any of this real? Is this Epstein guy even real? Is there a chance that he was just a financier? I said that to Tate on the podcast, and he laughed. And I wonder so much why he laughed. Because it's like, if this really was such a damaging secret that they had to hold on to, then why did we get it? Or maybe they're just testing public reaction to this thing. It all kind of feels like predictive programming.
What do you mean?
It's this concept that when we think of how information is released, some people think, based on the files, that Epstein was an agent for Mossad in Israel. I've known this for many years. Many people online have been saying this for many years. How did they know that? Where did the information stem from? Because if he was, then let's say a group of people know, right? And then let's say some people in that group maybe leaked the information intentionally or unintentionally to certain forums online, like 4chan, Reddit, these types of places that you have to go digging for. And maybe some podcaster reads this thing about it and he says something about all of this. And he says part of the story, but maybe someone is controlling him so he doesn't say the entire story, or maybe he's afraid of saying all of it because that could be dangerous to himself, because it's like, if you say something that's true and you're not entirely sure if it's true, then what are the ramifications for that? But yeah, it felt like the whole thing was just slowly released over time, and that by the time we all got it, no one gave a shit. Like, everyone's talking about all these different aspects of the files, and it's like, is anything really happening? Like, are you guys actually going to stop paying taxes? You know, I saw a video about that pop up on my page. It's like, yo, bro, we should just stop paying taxes, like, with all these people in charge of the government. And it's like, okay, do it, bro. It's like, and then also I was kind of like, from the third lens perspective of my life as the Truman Show, it's like, holy shit, my algorithm is testing me to see if I'm not going to pay taxes anymore. They're testing to see how I react to this content. because someone made the video and they're like, oh, we have to make sure the American public is like still going to pay taxes. So let's just push this video really hard today and see like what the comments are like, just to see how many more files we can release.
Let me ask you this. I think this is helpful. If you wanted to expose a secret that the people controlling the world didn't want you to release, how would you go about doing it?
Why would you do that? The people who would understand likely already have the inklings about the things that are going on, and the people that won't understand just won't take any action based on that anyway. I tried to get my mom to watch the Tate interview I did recently, and I explained to her some things that would maybe get her to see it through a different lens. And she was like, yeah, Jack, I really like the podcast, but he just keeps saying like the word retard so much that I can't listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would be doing a disservice by saying everything that I really think about the way things run. Because I think that's what they're doing now, man. I think they're trying to confuse everyone and make everyone anxious. And at the end of the day, there's no action you can take except for live your life and live a good life and try to do good. So I think the great trick would be me revealing things that they don't want me to reveal, because it would cause crisis. That would be me going against the system. Why do you want to be the person that goes against the system fully? I mean, sure, you can drop hints for those who are intelligent enough to understand them. You can always do that. You can make that your entire goal. But at the end of the day, it would be really challenging to put all the pieces together, because the lie is different at every level. And the reason that some of these things aren't suppressed, if you're curious, is because you're getting them from so many different sources, right? Candace Owens says one thing. Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist guy, says one thing. Andrew Tate says one thing. CNN says one thing. Dean Withers, the liberal influencer, says one thing. The Christian influencers say another thing. And maybe they're all exposing different parts of the system. And you have to take all the pieces that they're saying and put those together to actually have an understanding of how it all works. But you can't just trust one person, because one person isn't going to say the full truth, because the full truth will get them in trouble, right?
So do you think any of these individuals are pushed more than others?
Oh, of course. I think there are some people that are pushed and they don't know they're pushed. I think that's most of them.
Most?
I think most of everything isn't organically pushed, if you think about it. Because you kind of have like there are two types of things that go viral, right? There's the mainstream narrative that has to be artificially driven, in my opinion. And then there's the reactionary narrative that is organic in a sense, but is it organic if the first one was artificial, right? So it's like the Epstein files, that's all I can see on my X feed right now. Maybe I'm the only person that's all they get on their X feed. But if I make a video saying, I think all these Epstein files are fake, it's like, is that really organic? Or is that itself a result of the artificial push?
So it's like a domino effect. You start off with the finger that's artificial from an external provider, and the dominoes are the rest of the people that knock over each other.
Right. And you confuse everyone even greater by distracting everyone. Even me saying that there's a chance that this guy could not even be real. It's like, have any of you listening to this podcast right now met Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, there's a chance with some audience that maybe they did, but it's like, how do you know anything? Everything is so confusing. We used to just have a few news networks, and they would be the people that would lie to us, and that would be at least like, okay, we have this mainstream narrative of how things are, but now it's like we have 40 different competing narratives, and I can be right about anything I want to be right about. I just have to have my influencer draw the logical conclusions for me. You know what I mean? So it's like, what is truth in all of this? It's little bits and pieces of everything put together. And when you wrap a bow on it too nicely, that's probably when you get canceled or deplatformed or someone shows up to your house with a crossbow.
What do you fear the most at the moment?
I'm scared of two things. I'm scared of the scenario in which I'm right about a lot of my thoughts. And I'm scared of the scenario in which I'm wrong. Because if I'm wrong, I likely need to be in a mental hospital. And if I'm right, I am so uncertain about what the next few years of my life looks like. As far as right now, I find it interesting that the thing I'm best at is social media. And I fear that I'm not giving the viewers value and tips and tricks on how to go viral. And instead, in causing some sense of anxiety. So to resolve that fear, again, don't look into how all this stuff works. Don't look into the darkness. I'm one of the few people, I think, that gazed into the abyss of it all and came to the conclusion that it's not worth it to care. There is light still. I think a lot of people go crazy thinking about all this shit.
What side are you on politically?
I don't like to make affiliations. Yeah, I've never voted.
Why not?
Stupid. What the fuck? I can't say that, but I mean, what side am I on politically? I think just as a proponent of free speech, Trump has done a lot for free speech. And what was the thing you said to me at our first dinner? You said that we could say some word that we weren't allowed to say before.
We made retard great again.
Yeah. You said that was the number one difference you noticed in the Trump age. I think politics is just like mimetic. It's like, what is the cultural effect of having Trump as our president? What is the cultural effect of having Gavin Newsom as our president? Like, it'll be interesting. I don't know what these people are going to run their campaigns based off of. But if it's something that I like, maybe sure, I'll say a positive word or two about them.
There's a lot of mystery to what you've been saying. And I want us to increase that mystery a little bit more. So I hope you can play along with this. Can you tell me 2 truths and 1 lie?
Every time you see a big influencer, know that they've had a conversation with someone about what they can and cannot say. 50% of the activity that you see online is bots. The physical world is run by Satan and the spiritual world is run by God. Those are my 3. But truth is subjective.
If truth is subjective, and we know what we know from this conversation so far, why do you do what you do?
I never said that I was pursuing truth for others. I hope that others do find their own subjective truth that is useful to them. But the whole thing was really about me, you know? Like, no one's feeding me these questions. I ask people what I want to know. And at one point that was about money. At one point that was about shortcutting the algorithm. At one point that was about power. And now I found myself more interested in stories. Stories where someone went through something and came out on the other side and they were better because of it.
What's the most powerful story you've ever been told?
One that always confused me was, you know how Jesus was a human? It's like people will think, oh, Jesus was God, so like all the pain, like he already knew like what was going to happen, like sure, but he was also like fully human, right? So every bit of suffering he went through had to teach him some kind of lesson. And I found myself asking on the podcast, and I could never find anyone that answered this question. It was, what was God trying to teach Jesus when he let him be crucified? Because, I mean, what, he was sweating blood in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was saying, oh God, why hast thou forsaken me? There was a part of him that was really feeling like, why do I have to go through this? I think it was God trying to teach him submission. You have to submit to the pain, to the suffering, to the evil. Not in a way that the evil rules you, but in a way that you'll be okay if it does. Because what's the worst that could happen? The only way out is through.
It's interesting that your go-to is Jesus straight away as a story. And I've seen this with Christian friends that I have. They try and point to the fact that the reason why every single big movie that exists has the same story arc of the hero's journey, the struggle, is because it's exactly what Jesus went through. And somehow every story that you interact with, it speaks to the fundamental truth of the world, which is that Jesus died for our sins. He resurrected, and he did that in the name of humanity and our imperfection. Are you a Christian?
Oh gosh, I'm going to go down a Jordan Peterson rabbit hole of answer here.
Want me to ask you if
what
you
do you
believe?
mean by are you a Christian? What do you mean by believe? No, it is a very honest way in which he's answering, because if you're someone that has struggled with, if you're someone that has wrestled with God, you know what he means by, what do you mean believe? What do you mean Jesus? Like, it's fair. I think that you are religious no matter what. And I've had this debate with people, and I just can't understand where they don't see what I mean. It's like your actions dictate some type of belief in something, whether it's belief in the self, whether it's belief that the material world is the one that you're trying to conquer, whether it's belief that the spiritual world is the one you're trying to conquer. And if you look at your actions, it's like, are these aligned with the highest good? Are they aligned with the worst good? Or are they aligned with the worst possible thing? Or are they aligned somewhere in between? Or are they unaligned? Because if they're unaligned, someone's going to align them for you, right? If you don't believe in anything, someone's going to make you believe in something. Because there's a gap to be filled. Humans are naturally spiritual, in some sense. So, when I consider all the negative going on in the world, it's a fairly basic opinion, but I would assume that there's an equal opposite of it, right? And I think there's an equal opposite for a reason. And I know you're friends with Alex O'Connor. He had a really interesting take about God, that it's like, if you imagine the highest possible good, the thing that is all loving and all powerful and everywhere and all knowing, the belief in that thing is God, and you knowing that it's real makes it real. Do you know his take on that?
It sounds like it's pointing towards something that he would disagree with, which would be something like the ontological argument for God's existence, which is that the most powerful being possibly conceivable is one that actually exists as well. Therefore, God exists.
Right.
But it's a poor argument.
That's his favorite argument for God.
He said that before, I think, but he's also absolutely lambasted it in different videos, saying that it makes the leap where, okay, sure, the most powerful being in existence would be a God that exists, but that presumes that God does exist. You can just go, that would be the case if God does exist, but he doesn't. So it's irrelevant, right?
I think it's worth noting, I don't think enough Christians say this. I see all these Christian guys online trying to logic their way to Jesus. It's like, it's the whole point of it, right? Is faith. And I'm not trying to push my belief onto anyone. I think that would likely steer them further away from it. I think you have to ask yourself what feels like it's true. Because you can't logic yourself out to God. You can't logic yourself out to Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad as the prophet, you know? I think you can feel it, see what feels good, and test your life based on living in accordance with that.
I guess it doesn't help you get closer to a truth if there was an objective one, though, because there are over 1 billion Muslims out in the world that feel that that's the best for them.
Mhm.
And there are many more Christians that feel the same thing. So it feels like the only plausible option from that is that all of these truths are subjective in a pragmatic sense, where they help people live their lives well, but the historicity of them, the fact that these prophets did what they say they did, it's not true. If they're all claiming to do something, one of them's wrong, right? Or all of them.
Or maybe all of them are right. And maybe there's levels to the game. And maybe the amount of belief in the thing is the thing that makes it real. And there's just degrees to realness. And I think you can ponder with the question of, well, what is the ultimate creator, the creator of all things? And I think it just is, right? Whatever that thing is. I find it so funny how there are all these atheists that believe in aliens and all these atheists that believe in simulation theory. And I'm like, okay, let's imagine that it's a simulation, right? What do you think they're simulating? What would you simulate? Me personally, I would probably try to deduce what all these beings within my simulation find to be the meaning of their life. And after running countless simulations and seeing everyone steers toward this highest good creation thing, I'd be like, interesting. It doesn't matter how smart I make them. It doesn't matter where I put them. It doesn't matter at what point in history I put them. All roads lead to God. Because the creator of everything, he doesn't necessarily know why he exists. So he probably might want to figure that out.
Where I'm up to on this is thinking about consciousness and our perception of the world and how we interact with it as human beings. Now, it's very easy to think of ourselves as the pinnacle of all creation. We're these perfect beings that can grasp the true reality of the world, right? When that's not the case at all. I think there are certain things outside of our 5 senses that are still there, but we can't detect them. They're out there, objectively, in the world. You light a candle, you walk away from a room, you come back an hour later and it's burnt down. That's happened independent of your experience. So there's a real world out there, I think. It's independent of just my perception. Okay, well, what's my perception? Well, what you'd think is that it's a passive reception of reality, right? You're just mainlining reality into your eyeballs, which accurately depict what's actually going on out there right now, right? But that's not the case at all. If you speak to any scientist for 2 seconds, they'll tell you that
life is coming through you, not at you.
It's not passive reception. It's
or life
active.
Is coming from you, not at you, right? Is that what you're saying?
It's not passive reception. It's active interpretation. You're not just reading the story of the world. You're writing it to make sense of it because your brain is limited and it processes in a certain way. Okay. Well, that means a few different things, right? First of all, it means that by the limitations of our brain, because we're not all-seeing, all-powerful beings, there's more out there that's inexplicable to any person in history. Second of all, it means that we're probably viewing the world in completely fundamentally different ways that make sense to all of us, that are so real to us that we see them as true. But it opens up variation on that truth between individuals, even if they're looking at the same thing. Tying in the memetics here, what I think could be going on with religion is it's some sort of universal way of branching this interpretation of the world such that all humans understand it collectively. And even though the stories didn't historically happen on this timeline, they reflect something greater out there in the world that actually is truer than true, like a morality. like a human value. But I don't even know where to begin with that. But I think that's what could be going on with religion as someone who's an atheist, is that there are different levels to this game, and the way we interact with the world, it's not like an aeroplane passenger looking out the window. It's like the pilot looking out of an aeroplane, or looking within the aeroplane at all the different graphs that are showing him his altitude, the map, where he is. He's flying over LA. But you wouldn't say that he's seeing LA by looking at that map. It's just giving him a useful interpretation that he can understand, that lets him fly the fucking plane.
Right.
And I think that's what our bodies and our systems and our consciousness does, is they give us the most useful map that we can digest, and they let us fly the plane. They let us live our lives. So maybe there's something in that where spirituality and religion branch our limited human senses to something much greater that is true out there.
There's a case for cope. There's a very legitimate case for cope. But to say that religion is cope, you could say that technology is cope from uncertainty, right? So which cope started first, you know? It's not a question anyone will ever be able to answer. But I think the question individuals have to ask themselves is, at the end of the day, I'm interpreting lots and lots of information. In which lens do I interpret it that's most helpful to my life? And do I want to maximize my life and align with highest good? Or do I want to not care, be indifferent?
What is the highest good if everything's subjective?
It's not a thinking thing, it's a feeling thing. It has to be. It wouldn't make any other sense. I think everyone deeply knows what is good in their heart.
Do they?
I think that's a question we would have to ask individuals, but do you? Do you know when you're doing something that feels like I'm doing a good thing?
I know when I do something that feels like I'm doing a good thing, but that's at the mercy of my emotions.
Right.
My processing, my wills, my desires, my drives.
And do you think most other people would interpret the things you're doing as harmful when you think you're acting in accordance with good?
Not most.
Right. I think that's the case for most. Too many people see good as this subjective thing, but I really do think it comes down to what feels good. I think humans are very, very similar, and they try to make us act like we're all different. I can't remember the date on this, but it used to be really hard to get Americans to go to war and shoot people. It was very unnatural for us to kill other humans. So they released a lot of really good war movies and released a lot of really good war video games. And it's really interesting to look at who created those games and who created those movies and why they would want to do that. Like, why did they make humans want to do this thing that is so unnatural to us?
Is it unnatural to kill?
Does it feel natural for you to murder someone?
I think if you look at history, history is necessarily shaped by murder and suffering. Survival of the fittest, extinction of the weakest. I think that's what naturally aligns itself most with reality and how everything's unfolded.
I think humans have a natural urge to protect what's theirs, but I don't think they have an urge to go into a country and kill someone unless they're told that it's for the greater good. I think it's surprisingly easy to lead people down a path to do that. Humans are easy to take advantage of, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't think it's natural to sin, to be away from God, to do things that don't feel morally upright. I think everyone has a really good gauge of doing the good thing. And I think a lot of what's going on is trying to disrupt some of that.
Do you think those disruptors think what they're doing is actually the best?
It's funny you say that. I used to think they thought they were doing the right thing, like they were drinking their own Kool-Aid. Clavicular, when I met him several months before we did the podcast, the first thing he asked me was, Jack, do you feel like all these guys in your podcast are like honest, or do you think they're just grifting? Because I think they're all grifters. And I was like, dude, what? I was like, no way, this 19-year-old just said this to me. And I was like, no, I think they believe their own shit. Like they think they're doing good, and maybe it's like not good for everyone, but I think at the end of the day, they feel as though they deserve the money for whatever thing they're doing, to protect the people in their lives and take care of themselves. So I think they think it's good. But at some level, I think you're doing bad to some people. I just don't think you care about those people. I think you can know you're doing bad, but still rationalize it because of internal supremacy, right? Like, you're not in my tribe, so I don't have to take care of you. I can harm you and extract your resources and extract your anxiety to use it for my people.
Can I ask you a really tough question? Do you think that's what you did in your previous career?
1000%. I'm really good at seeing where people are coming from. And I'm also really good at justifying my own immoral behavior. I think humans excel at that.
The smarter you are, the better you are at convincing yourself of something.
Right. Like, I could give you 1,000 reasons as to what I thought I was doing was for the greater good and why I thought me not doing it was actually selfish. But yeah, no, I think it's a feeling thing. I think it just feels bad.
I just wonder where this leads us. It makes sense, but it leaves us with nothing to truly grasp onto if everything's a feelings thing and we can agree that we all have slightly different feelings, even if we all have this general direction of good. Without that good being objective, it's very hard to actually converge on an answer for anything, right?
When you look at truth, do you value how you feel about truth more, or the logic of the words you're putting in your brain together to get to the truth?
I think even if I value the logic of the words that I put together to get to truth, my emotional justification has to be tripped.
Right. And doesn't that tell you that the emotions are more powerful?
Totally. So what the fuck do we do?
Lean into your emotions a little bit. But lean into what feels good, not hedonistic, but aligned with doing the right thing, you know? Humans existed for hundreds of thousands of years before words and language existed. You know this? Language isn't entirely natural to humans. It was developed over a very, very long time. We used to not speak. We used to grunt at each other. Then eventually we made clicking sounds, and eventually those turned into words. And words and language are kind of like an alien parasite. Like something foreign to us that spreads rapidly and develops rapidly. And it's like, where did all this take us? It took us away from feeling and took us toward like using technology and different inventions as a way to cope with our anxiety. Some of those thoughts were from Chase Hughes, a guest I had on the podcast. He has a book about language being an alien parasite. I need to read it all the way, but it's super fascinating that language, it was not like created with humans, you know? Where do you think it leads us?
I think it leads us to constantly evolve who we think God is. Because I don't think that the interpretation we currently have is objective. I think God is the name of the blanket that you throw over the mystery to give it shape. And that mystery keeps on changing because you make progress. You learn things. So there's less mystery here, but another one opens up. And that's perennial. It's always going to happen. let's see where it takes us with AI. There'll be new mysteries. We'll solve most of the old ones, and there'll be much more complex ones to solve, and we'll probably create a new god to fill that void. Just like we have done. If you take a bird's eye view at history, there's not one god that's dominated all of time. It evolves. You're more in tune with the farmland, the weather on your crops. It dictates whether you eat or whether your family starves. So you create a sun god and a rain god. And then your society evolves a little bit and you start worrying less about the stuff at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. You go higher up. So then you unlock the god of love and emotional stuff. And then eventually you get to a point where you've got the Christian faith, you've got Islam, you've got Judaism. And I don't know how it stood the test of time for 2,000 years, but I don't know if it can stand the test of time for another 2,000.
You know, I talked about the Truman Show earlier. The Truman Show is really a Gnostic allegory of the demure and the archons, and that the Gnostic Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas, the Apocryphon of John, all these texts basically point to the fact that Jesus wasn't God, and that Jesus really was a guy who was here to say that God is within you, right? You are God. That's how some people interpret that. That feels like the greatest trick ever, man. I think it's true, but I think it's true in the context of both things are real. I think God is within you, but you are not him. Because you are not the highest good, but you have the potential to align with that. And that's what makes us human, likely. I don't want to quote Tate too much for my podcast, but I mean, you do have to evaluate the ways in which it's affecting your own life and how it's making you weaker or less pure and more stressed and more anxious. And I think it's helpful to look at all the stuff you see on your phone through the lens of, where is this trying to take me? Why is it trying to take me there? And then just do the opposite.
What do you see as the future for Gen Z?
The way that I see it is that maybe the art of existence is not the action of painting, and it's definitely not the picture you create at the end. It's likely the reason that you pick up the brush. In other words, the reason you're living is probably the same reason that you haven't killed yourself. That last part's from Hormozy, but have you ever questioned that? Like, why don't I kill myself?
There's a book called The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. It's one of the most famous works of philosophy ever. And he starts off by saying, there is but one important question in philosophy. It's, what is it that's stopping you from killing yourself?
You know, a question I always wanted to add to my podcast was, what tattoo would you get? And I think Sisyphus would probably be mine. But it's interesting because I haven't read this story forever, but I would imagine the first few times he rolled the boulder up the hill, he pushed the boulder up the hill, he was likely very excited to get to the top. You know, he's like, just a little bit more, and then it goes to the top, and then it rolls down. He's like, okay, well, this time it's gonna be different. This time it's gonna stay at the top. And then eventually it's like, why do I keep pushing this thing? Is it because something's trapping me into pushing this thing? Or is it because I like the way the rock feels on my hands? Is it because I'm getting stronger? Is it because each time I push it up the hill, it gets a little easier. I think it's a question people should reference more often.
There's this idea of absurdism.
Oh my God. Oh, that's funny you bring that up. Okay.
You become enlightened to the fact that you existing is inherently absurd because you can't understand the truths of the universe, and you also don't really have a good justification for why you don't just end it all. And the analogy that Joe Foley gives is that you're like an ant, you as a human alive in this world, this little ant, and someone's drawn a massive circle around you with a marker. And usually what ants do is they mistake it for a wall that they can't cross, so they don't. And this is humans when it comes to killing ourselves. We kind of don't question it. We don't even see it as an option because we think the natural state is existence, rather than actually being aware of the fact that by keeping ourselves alive every day, we're making an active choice to buy into the game and the rules of it. But what absurdism is becoming the enlightened ant, the one that realizes that this big circle drawn around it isn't actually a boundary. They can cross it if they want, but they choose to stay within it anyways, for the love of it. We realize that there's nothing stopping us from exiting this world. Maybe even that it makes the most sense, but we choose to play the game. That's absurdism.
I feel as though my experiences and my algorithms are drawing me toward absurdity. I'm not too into some of that dark magic spirituality that people do. Maybe it's not dark magic if they don't see it that way, but tarot cards. I keep getting TikTok videos on my For You page of jester cards. And I asked this girl, I was like, you're into this shit. Like, what does a jester mean? She's just like, your life is about to be really absurd. And I kept getting these videos over and over again. And I'm like, it does feel that way. It feels like all this stuff is happening and just keeps getting stranger and stranger. And I think back to the Truman Show movie. I watched it last night. And I kept thinking, like, I think he knew the entire time what was happening to him. And he just liked to fuck with everyone to make it more interesting. I think that's a game to be played as well, as to lean into the absurdity and to own it and to submit to it, right? Because ending it all is objectively a finite game, and me personally, I find infinite games to be more interesting. It's like, if you're an all-powerful person, why not just destroy the world? Why has no one destroyed the world? There was one guy who came close. But maybe the ones who are capable of destroying the world come to the conclusion that infinite games are more interesting.
Do you believe in numerology?
At the very least, it's a useful heuristic for decision making, right? We filmed this podcast on the 8th. I'm a life path 8. Numerology says that, who's the Super Bowl game today? Numerology said that the Patriots were supposed to lose. So we can test it. Did the Patriots lose the Super Bowl?
The Seahawks won.
Fair. I had no idea. I've been with you the entire time. And that's something I love about this episode too, is that I hate mainstream celebrations in general. Like, I hate, like, going out for my birthday or something. My biggest preference is to do a podcast or something. When I filmed with Candace Owens, it was on my birthday. I don't think she knew that, but I was like, this feels so much better than doing a celebration, because it's like I'm actually leaning into what I think my purpose to be a little bit.
Why don't you like the celebrations? You think they take you away from your purpose?
I think so. I think there's a time to celebrate, but usually in big events and big days, it's like, why am I giving my energy toward some hedonistic bullshit that I don't really enjoy? It's like, am I enjoying this thing for the enjoyment of other people? Sometimes there's a place for that. It's like when you're a kid, Christmas was really fun. And then I think Christmas gets kind of lame. And then I think you have kids and Christmas is fun again. But back to the numerology, it's hard to not think there's some truth to it. When I was young, my uncle, he's probably my best friend. He died at age 44. And I was curious. I was like, what day did he die on? It's the 9th, the number of things ending. I was like, what was his numerology life path? It was an 8, just like me. I was like, weird. I was like, what's his secondary number? That's basically the number that you use to achieve your life path. So 8 is the number of power and money. He used his secondary number 11, spirit, like spiritual teaching. He's a very spiritual person. And he used that to get that. Mine is intelligence. Maybe I use intelligence to make money. Maybe I use truth seeking to make money. But what was so weird about him was he died. So he was born, I think it was 1964. I can't remember the exact year, but it was the year of the wood dragon in Chinese zodiacs. And he lived in a log cabin, which was funny. And he died by a fire in the year of the fire pig, which is so funny because I was born in the year of the snake. And the enemy year of a snake is the year of the pig. And people often die in the enemy year of the person that it hurts the most. So I look at these things, and maybe they're just weird patterns, but it's strange.
You've lived such a life already. You're 24 years old. You've interviewed some of the most famous people in the world. You've made all the money a lot of people could dream of. Do you find it hard to relate to other people?
The lonely at the top thing is very real. I find it extremely hard to relate to other people and for other people to understand me because they don't have context of all my full experiences, and the amount of time and the amount of hardship I would have to go through with them to share my full experiences would be unreasonable. And it's hard to meet people off the bat these days because there's perceived levels of status associated, perceived levels of wealth. So any person my age is like a little weirded out by me subconsciously. And then there's like the 40-year-old people who are super successful who's like, you're just a young kid. Yeah, I would say it's difficult to relate to people, but it might be like a bell curve issue where I'm smart enough to the point where I can't relate to people. But if I was smarter, I would be able to relate to everyone. I think it's a skill issue. But relating and understanding are different things. I don't think that people at the upper echelons of any discipline or any level of success are capable of being understood by everyone they interact with. But I think they're capable of relating with them.
Understanding is a supply issue. Relating is a skill issue.
I like that.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done to get a podcast guest?
Successful or unsuccessful?
Give me both.
Oh man, I think we tracked down iShow Speed when he was in LA on his stream.
What do you mean we tracked him down?
Like me and my friend, they were driving the car and I was watching his stream and I was like, okay, he's on the street, he's on the street, he's on the street. And I had this old Rolex that I was given for my birthday by a friend of mine. And I was like, I'm going to give him a Rolex and say I want 60 seconds of your time. And it was so crazy because I was watching the stream and we were about 4 minutes away from him, and he's like, shit, I need a earring. So he walks into this jewelry shop to get an earring, and the guy gives him a free Rolex. And I'm like, what are the odds that this is happening right as I'm about to give him that? And we ended up missing the street, followed him back to another place, and followed him back to another place. It was like this really exclusive event that he was in, and there was like hundreds of fans waiting outside. And I was like, am I about to climb the fence right now? I didn't. I thought it would be too difficult, but we tried to get speed that way. Tucker Carlson, I went to one of his speaking events. Thousands of people there, man. He sells out stadiums. And afterward, I just went up to every single individual that had a badge on, like a press badge, and was asking them for their email. And I got connected with RFK Jr.'s team, but I didn't get connected with Tucker's team. But yeah, I often try to go into a space that they're in and just ask people who are working there, like, yo, who's the person that says yes or no? I met Andrew Tate because the guy who would unban social media accounts for me got his Instagram unbanned. That was how I originally got the connection with them. They got the Tates unbanned off Instagram, and that's how he had his number, and he introduced me, and that's kind of how we set it up. Candace Owens, I bought a Cameo for her. It wasn't on the app Cameo, it was on Minect, which is kind of like Cameo for business owners or people who like political commentators. Yeah, I paid for a Cameo from Candace, and I basically was like, hey, I have 15 million followers. What's your email address? I want to do a podcast. And she's like, I like the hustle. Here's my email. We'll set it up. And yeah, that actually worked out really well. She was the second podcast we ever posted. Patrick Bet David. I did the same thing because he's the founder of the app Minect. And I asked for like the email. And I said, Patrick asked me to reach out to schedule an interview on this day at this time. And then they were like, great, we'll add it to the calendar.
So what happened when he turned up?
He just thought it was in his schedule.
You know Matan Evan?
Yeah.
Are you friends with him?
No, I DM'd him today though.
What did you say?
I said, I live in LA. I like your shit if you want to hang.
Who do you think's better at getting big guests, you or Matan Evan?
Has he done Nick Fuentes, Alex Ramosi, and Andrew Tate?
No.
I only know one guy that's done that. I'm joking, but no, Matan is he's awesome. He's younger than me too, which I respect heavily. His is kind of like a different thing though. Like, I feel like when you're committing to Matan, you're committing to like a fixed outcome, which is like, oh, I'm gonna like go on this podcast and like be trolled, and like he kind of has everyone on. But like when you're committing to me, it's like I'm about to be interrogated for like 2 hours, and like it might not even do well. But yeah, he's definitely good at it. There's been some other good social climbers. I think when I started the podcast, I looked for Bobby Althoff as like the main method. And I was like, how did she get Drake so quickly? She couldn't have just been an industry plant. Like, I'm not crazy. I don't believe everyone's an industry plant, just most of them. But I was like, who was the first person she interviewed? I can't remember this guy's name. She interviewed some comedian. He was close to Drake, right? And I don't know if she paid that guy to come on, or she just used her Bobby Althoff skills. But I think right after the interview, she's like, hey, can you put me on with Drake? And I was like, interesting. So infiltrate the friend group to get to the person that you want to interview. So my thesis on this was I wanted to interview Andrew Tate. So I was like, who are all the people that have interviewed Andrew Tate or are friends with him? So if you look at my first few episodes, It's Ty Lopez, who I know for a fact Andrew Tate was a fan of at some point because they did a similar business model. Candace Owens, who interviewed Tate. I didn't even know Candace was that big before I reached out to her originally. Justin Waller, a good friend of Tate's. Michael Franzese interviewed the Tates, mafia boss. And after a while, I was like, kind of figuring out the best way to reach out to them. And then I think by the time I reach out to them, they're like, oh my gosh, you've interviewed these people who are our friends. Like, Jack's cool. We'll approve it. And then what's funny about once you interview Andrew Tate, you basically get to have any person who sells a course come on your podcast. Same as if you interview Alex Hormozi, you get to have any person who does business online content on your podcast because people look to the top for validation, right? I actually knew Hormozi before I started the podcast. I just reached out to him and been like, hey, bro, I lost a bunch of weight because of your videos. And if you ever need help with like YouTube thumbnails or hiring editors or anything, let me know. And yeah, I think he messaged me back. We messaged back and forth. And so, yeah, I knew that if I ever started a podcast, I could ask him. But even him, dude, I met with their producer in Vegas. I flew there just to meet with their producer. He rejected me. Then I DM'd Layla and was like, are you down to come on the podcast? And she was like, yeah, I'm down. Go to Vegas, have Layla on the show. Kind of feeling out that Alex still didn't want to come on. And then I was like, hey, Layla's did really well. I texted him that. I was like, would love to have you on the show as well. And then he was down, you know. But that was after multiple inflection points of people.
The way you blew up on TikTok was making many different videos about blood-curdling facts for people.
Right.
Millions and millions of views. What's the most blood-curdling fact you know?
I didn't think I would be talking about this in 2026, but I'll give you 3 that come to mind. So in the 1960s, should I use my scary voice? In the 1960s, NASA funded an experiment to teach dolphins English, and they were like giving the dolphins LSD to maybe help them communicate with humans better. But the reason the experiment ended, and it seemed to be working pretty well, like dolphins were kind of learning how to communicate with humans, but the reason the experiment ended was because one of the scientists working with the dolphins, Margaret Levitt, was having sex with a dolphin named Peter. So they had to end the experiment. And then Peter killed himself. So that's one. Another one, this one's not maybe blood-curdling, but it is kind of, if you think about it too much. So giving someone the finger, it's like 2,000 years old, right? And the original meaning of it was telling someone that you're going to fuck them. So today it means fuck you, but back then it meant I'm going to fuck you. The worst one, you're not Irish, are you?
No.
No, I guess I'm the Irish one here. So this one is maybe self-deprecating in my lineage, but I think in the 12th century Ireland, the way that you would be appointed as a king was this ritual in where the king would take a white horse, and at the initiation ceremony, he would have sex with it in front of everyone. And then he would have to cook its meat and everyone would eat it together. And that's how he would claim the throne.
Did he go like this before he did it? Fuck you.
He looked at that horse, he was like, you know what I mean?
You have the fastest growing podcast in the world. You've never been on a podcast yourself as a guest. Why did you choose to come on this one?
I chose your show despite many, many invites, genuinely, which I'm surprised about because it's like, why would you want to interview me? No one knows anything about me.
I guess that's why.
That's fair. But I chose your show because I heard about you from Chris Williamson, who has maybe a top 5, top 10 podcast in the world.
Number 8.
Number 8. And he was like, yeah, Jack, I really have been paying attention to your stuff. There's a couple young guys that I'm looking at that are up and coming. I would say it's you, Dwarkesh Patel, who his podcast may be growing faster than me for all I know. He's been crushing it. And he's like, but then there's this Elliot kid, Elliot Bewick. And I was like, I've never heard of that person. And then I look at your channel and I'm like, I think at the time you had a couple thousand subscribers. And I was like, Chris, who the fuck is this? Like, how did you even find this guy? And I watched the episodes and I'm like, oh, this kid's a genius. And he's like, you're 20 years old now?
Yeah.
I think you were 19 at the time. I was like, he said you were like betting on Bitcoin at $1. But as far as the reason that I chose to go on yours specifically, I think you're the person that is the most talented interviewer in the world for your subscriber count. By far. Bar none. And I think you're severely underrated. And honestly, I've never been on a podcast. Like, I don't really know how to do it. And I figured that if I did a good job, the algorithm would reward both you and me greatly. And if I did a bad job, the penalty wouldn't be that crazy.
Smart.
But yeah, I think you're a good kid. And I think you're probably one of the people that I have the best discussions with of any person I've met. Because we're close to the same age. There's a part of you that wants to learn from me, and there's a part of me that wants to learn from you. And what a lot of people might not realize watching this podcast is I usually speak less than you when we have conversations, or it's about 50-50. And you're probably the only person I know that I can have a 50-50 conversation with. It doesn't seem like it with this podcast, but that's because I think he wants to leave room for me to open up a bit because I'm a hard person to get to open up.
It's rare. You've treated me with an absolute gem of a conversation. How'd you ask such good questions?
That's a good one. I think I tricked my entire audience into thinking I asked good questions. I posted a compilation of my guests saying, good question, great question, that's an amazing question. In reality, like they only said it one time in the podcast, but when all the high status faces are placed together in this appeasing edit, and at the end it says the Jack Neel podcast, we ask okay questions. It kind of makes you think, oh, this guy does ask good questions. And then imagine you go on my podcast and you see that clip and you have this presumption that other people have said that's a good question. So it makes you subconsciously say it more. And then it makes other people comment on the video, wow, he does ask good questions. He does ask good questions. It creates this hyperloop of manipulation where people just assume that I ask good questions.
So you psyop your entire audience into thinking you ask good questions.
I would say psyop is an understatement. I even find myself questioning, like, if there are bot comments saying, good question, Jack, because they're just doing an analysis of the other sentiment in the comments. But I have no evidence to suggest that that would be true. Now, the question of what makes someone say the phrase literally, like, that's a good question, I think it's usually just making someone ponder something they haven't pondered before, which, I don't know, makes them feel anxious in the moment and they need space to think about it. So maybe they say it subconsciously. Maybe it's something that they've always wanted to talk about, which is why they say it, and they'll say it in a more excited way. Like, that's a good one, you know? Maybe it's just simply that they can't say the full truth. It seems to me like that's when I said it when I was on this podcast. But I think the key to actually asking things that gets good information out of the person is to not study words and questions, but to study the types of situations in which a person performs to the best of their abilities. Like, that's really what a good question is to me. Like, if someone does the best when they're a comedian, it's like, how do I set up a situation in which they're allowed to be funny and playful? If someone does the best when they're emotionally inspiring, it's like, how do I bring them to a moment where that's the case? I think the key to asking good questions is just to understand what the other person excels at and setting them up to deliver that punchline in a way that's easy and interesting to them.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
I hope that I'm the #1 podcast in the world, or that I quit at a point where I realized that wasn't possible to achieve without losing the good parts of myself entirely. I hope to have kids.
What's the #1 thing you want to teach your kids before they become adults?
To be able to decipher when something is just noise or when something is useful feedback. People are going to hate you, but you have to also realize that people hate things they don't understand, right? Like, you hate the father that screamed at you, but you don't hate the little boy that he was that got screamed at harder. Like, you hate the friend who didn't support your dreams, but you don't hate the friend that was scared they were going to lose you because they realized they couldn't keep up with your tenacity and success levels. If something makes you feel bad, genuinely, you just don't understand it enough. You can't control other humans. You can't change other humans. But if you learn to understand their patterns, it would be unreasonable for you to be emotionally affected by it.
So that's the advice you'd give your kids. Now, if all the advice you've ever been given, all the information you've ever consumed, every single answer you've had from every podcast guest you've interviewed, every book you've read was condensed into one piece of advice that you could give in the next 60 seconds, what would that piece of advice be?
I'll give you 3. Hormozy. Figure out what you want, ignore the opinions of others, and do so much volume that it would be unreasonable that you would be unsuccessful. Belmar. You are what you think about. Everything that you think about, you become. Thoughts lead to actions, actions lead to behaviors, behaviors lead to lifestyle, and lifestyle determines your destiny. Cliff Connectley. Love Jesus and follow him. Now, what I would say that pertains to my life, I've always been someone who was so drawn toward cheat codes and the easy path and trying to figure things out. And I think this largely stems from the fact that most things that I tried to become talented or excellent at, I sucked at in the first place. I guarantee you that if we did any activity together right now, you would be better at me if neither of us had done it before. I'm an extremely slow learner and I suck at things when I start doing them. And I haven't met many people who share this tendency. It seems like everyone I meet is just naturally good at things they touch, and everything they touch turns to gold instantly. But me, it took time. It took so much fucking time, dude. Like, I was a national speech and debate champion in acting, but the year before I started the activity, I couldn't even like get into my school play. Like, I sucked at. I applied as a extra, and they didn't let me do it because I was too bad. But my take here is, if you're looking for the edge of human excellence, don't look to the naturally talented. Look to those who are hungry, who have something they're chasing or something that's chasing them. Only then can you find the maximum of human potential.
Well, Jack Neel, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Elliot.
It's been a pleasure.